It's life, Jim, but not as we know it.
So it's entirely possible that microbial life has already travelled to somewhere like Mars. Conditions there were remarkably similar to Earth 3.8 billion years ago. Could these extremophile microbes have already colonised the underground aquifers of Mars? If they're already there, have they adapted to their new environment? Or maybe life on Earth actually originated on Mars and then travelled over to our planet. They may not be little green aliens or intelligent life as we understand it, but the very possibility that life could have transferred across the solar system and beyond is deeply intriguing.
Amazing microbes. The unmistakable voice of Professor Brian Cox there. The video Are We Thinking About Alien Life All Wrong is available on BBC Ideas. Jamie, what is the big idea here?
Was it Brian Cox or was it Alan Bennett?
In my impression, they're the same, with a flash of John Ronson. She didn't say anything.
Before we start, I will say that I am a history graduate that then became a journalist, and I have done zero science for, 25 years? No,
Bodes well.
More,
yeah.
15 years. But NASA this week have announced evidence of life on Mars with what they're calling a high degree of confidence. NASA isn't claiming that we've found Martian microbes crawling around in the dust. What they have found are mineral textures and chemical signatures inside a Martian mudstone that looks remarkably similar to patterns left by microbes here on Earth. Minerals like vivianite and gregite, which sounds like factions in the Labour Party, doesn't it? Arranged in bullseye patterns hint at ancient chemical cycles that could have been driven by microbial activity billions of years ago.
Okay.
It is apparently the strongest potential biosignature yet, but NASA stresses the word potential, which is probably why we bring it to an underreported podcast, because I guess if they had actually found life, it might be front and centre on the old BBC homepage.
But this appeals to you, old conspiracy theory JT, because it plays into the concept of panspermia. Tell me about that.
Yes, absolutely. This isn't a late night podcast, Ollie. You can say it properly. Panspermia. The idea is simple but profound. Maybe life didn't start on Earth at all, but maybe the seeds of life came from somewhere else, Mars in this instance. Hitchhiking on comets or asteroids. Recent studies of space rocks brought back by NASA's NASA mission and a Japanese mission found that asteroids contained amino acids, basically the building blocks of DNA and RNA. And the theory goes that if these ingredients rained down on early Earth, they could have jump-started biology here. So if you want a little bit of a history, I know you're always into the history of panspermia, it actually comes from the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras. He's probably going to be dead, so he won't mind me butchering his name, writing in the 5th century BCE, which suggested that life, or at least its seeds, were spread throughout the cosmos. He coined the word panspermia, meaning seeds everywhere. Basically, since then, it's kind of it's popped up in and around science for a little bit, but it resurfaced in the 20th century during the space age, where astrobiologists like Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe argued that interstellar dust might actually contain microbes. And that is where we bring it back to the clip, which is Brian Cox talking about some of the things that we found on Earth, these things called extremophiles, which are microbes that can survive boiling heat, freezing cold radiation, and even the vacuum of space. Basically, they didn't exist before, or they did exist, but we didn't know about them. And the fact that then that kind of proves that microbes could survive, because that was always one of the things about panspermia. People were like, these microbes can't survive this trip, but actually they potentially could. We're here. It's possible that we've had life on Earth seeded from life from other places.
Okay.
Now, the other argument, Ollie, which I'm sure you're about to put across, is that maybe it's all bollocks.
Well, I was about to say not quite that, but maybe it's not, like, surprising, Felicity. You know, I mean, Jamie was saying that for a while this was kind of discredited theory and now it's being a bit more embraced. But actually just, again, very much not as a science graduate, but just now being aware of just how large the galaxy and the universe is, the fact that some rocks might have piggybacked from Mars to Earth doesn't seem like that big a distance. I mean, it's a bit, you know, it's the same as going from a satellite to Earth or from the moon to Earth. It's right next to us in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, kind of. I think, so I approached this story with quite a lot of cynicism, thinking that this was either scientists getting very excited, and this was a lot of confirmation bias at play, it was like the dream find for scientists, or it was journalists getting, all the headlines being like life on Mars, or it was NASA scientists who want to get this story into the news because they need to secure funding for sample return, which is a major part of this. Getting it back from Mars and getting it in a lab to actually see what's going on is a big part of this. But then when I started to look into it, my cynicism sort of evaporated and my mind was literally kind of blown. It genuinely does. It is starting to look like there is a compelling case for life on Mars with this new rock that's been found. And the conclusions of that are kind of mad, because it would kind of suggest that life is easy to get going. So if there's life on Mars, it would have been there at was on Mars 3.5 billion years ago. That would have been at the same time as Earth. So if life started on Earth and Mars independently, that is quite a big deal and suggests that life can just get going, which makes it more likely that it could have happened elsewhere in the solar system. And like you said, is not that much of a big deal. Or the other mind-blowing possibility is that we are Martians who turned up on this planet and started life here, but we actually came from Mars. So every which way you look at this, it's hard not to have your mind blown, I think.
There you are. What do you think, Harriet, of the idea we all came across on who needs the small boats? We've got small asteroids.
Yeah, there's this actually, there's kind of a sort of fringe theory called directed panspermia. So this is kind of this theory that aliens actually deliberately sent microbes or life forms to Earth to like propel evolution, which, obviously is not very credible. But I've actually been following this really closely over the past few years. I'm kind of into space. And I think that what has been passing under the radar over the past year in particular is this drip, drip, drip of information that is being released about what the NASA's Perseverance rover has been finding on Mars, because it landed there in 2021. So this is like 4 years worth of information now. It's like we've had news story after news story after news story over the past few years of credible evidence of past microbial life being found on Mars. It's passing under the radar, I think, because there is no way to actually prove it yet until we get the samples back from Mars, which is massively in the balance at the moment, because Donald Trump's proposed cuts to NASA have basically cancelled the Mars sample return program, which was a joint program between NASA and the European Space Agency. But there is very, very credible indications of past microbial life on Mars. That is not to say that it is easy for life to begin. It's also not to say that just having the right conditions means that you'll necessarily create life. And it doesn't actually solve the bigger question, which is how did life begin? Where life began is interesting and compelling, but it is not the question that scientists are most hung up on.
Yeah, it's also maybe just not as sexy, Jamie, as, Man on the Moon. That's the thing, isn't it? In terms of appeal to the public and cut through, it seems like NASA, in a way, have been trying to beat that ever since 1969. And, it's interesting, isn't it, what Felicity mentioned? She said she sort of cynically thought this, then dismissed this. But a lot of people in the comments sections of some of the websites we've been looking at with regard to this story are saying, which is, NASA makes this case every decade. They say, there might be life on Mars, and they say it just at the very point that they need some more money to fund themselves, because it's the one thing they might hook people in with.
Yeah, I actually, as I was reading about this, there was the famous one was in 1996 when a NASA team said that it had found ancient microbial life within a 4 billion old Martian meteorite that had landed in Antarctica, including microscopic fossils, organic molecules, mineral structures. Basically, an international team then completely debunked it and said it wasn't clear, or it wasn't as clear as obvious as they make out. There was a Wall Street Journal article on this that was talking about false starts in the search for life on Mars. I think there's a part of me that doesn't really blame NASA. If any company or organization is looking to make more money, this kind of PR is going to be incredible for them. But they have developed a scale, the confidence of life detection scale, which is COLD, to guide announcements. And right now, the Perseverance rover's findings sit in the middle, which is compelling but not proof. I think probably in terms of like the future, it is, as Felicity says, all about sample return. Perseverance has cached those Martian cores, including the Mudstone. If they can get them back to Earth, then we can talk about, being able to do better studies on it. But there are also other missions going to Europa, Titan, kind of beyond Mars with the moons. They're basically moons, and they might have a better chance for active life than active life we're talking about, rather than millions of years ago. So I agree that it makes a lot of sense for them to keep banging the drum for life on Mars. But there's a part of me that feels quite like, God, this is so beyond. We've got so many problems on Earth at the moment that it's kind of so beyond the realms of why we're even bothering to think about it, that there could be life on the other. But there is a kind of mind-blowing element, like Felicity was saying, that was like, God, we could be so wrong about. We could be like before Galileo and the Earth is flat. We could be so wrong about how we think of the universe and how we think. And I think panspermia as an idea is a great example of that. Of people being like, hang on a second, maybe they're right. Maybe we have been. Life has started elsewhere and then come to the Earth rather than the other way around.
I mean, you twice appealed to God there. I don't know if you were aware of it, and I do wonder about that being another factor. In the US in particular, I don't know which of you wants to take this up, but I just wonder whether it really will guarantee NASA more funding, talking about the origins of life, when, of course, sizable donors to Donald Trump think that God created the world for Adam and Eve.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump is also massively pushing the idea of sending human missions to Mars.
Yeah, but not to contravene the Bible.
I mean, yes, on the one hand, you've got the religious component that is evident in the US government, and we've got NASA's proposed funding cuts and why there might be a kind of vested interest in getting people more excited about this. But like everything else we talk about on this podcast, like every single other topic, it comes back to power, because China is also pursuing missions to retrieve samples from Mars in 2028, which would make it like the first country to bring potentially biologically active planetary stuff back from beyond Earth. India is also pursuing a similar mission. Like other countries are looking at similar programs, like Jamie was saying, to other moons. So this goes far beyond the US, and it's also like, no matter how much you can say, and I think it's a very legitimate argument, that there are much bigger problems on Earth that require much more money and funding and attention, and this seems so esoteric and so kind of luxury. It is also that it's part of the space race. It's part of a race for dominance with China, effectively.
I mean, Felicity, one group that is excited about all this stuff, of course, is your readers at The Week Junior. Do you detect that from your mailbag, that this is the kind of thing they'd get excited about? It's us adults saying, well, so what?
I actually don't think we have put this story in our magazine for next week, which I'm beginning to think was an omission. It was on the it was on the list of stories, but I wonder whether that initial cynicism of, every time there's a headline where it's like maybe or something like that, we think this is too speculative to give to our readers. But the more I looked into it, the more I got really excited, and it's definitely something. Our readers love space stories, and particularly when there's so much grim news going on here on Earth, we're always looking for something that's positive and exciting and groundbreaking. And I do understand the arguments of, we've got so much to deal with here on Earth, why are we bothering with things beyond our planet? But I disagree, just because I love stories that show human endeavour and just the fact that we can even do this, that we can even get a rover to Mars and even be looking into all this, just I think is absolutely wonderful, and I think our readers feel the same. So yeah, I might have to hastily go back to the drawing board and see if we can make this our cover story.
Well, there is a cold hard cash argument to this as well. Like, these countries' space agencies are not just pursuing the notion of life beyond Earth just like for funsies. They do believe that the answers to how life began could be really valuable and profitable in fields like robotics, like AI in particular, synthetic biology, chemistry. Like, they are seeing this as an investment that will have dividends down the line. It's not just a case of wonder and human endeavor. There is also that they are investing this much money in it because they believe that they will get more out of it.
Consider the gargantuan return on investment.